let's get started. Velina, everyone, mahalo for coming to our next installment of our Moʻokūʻauhau resource series. Tonight we have a very special guest here with us, Kalani Stoleson. He is the Hawaiian language curriculum developer at Kahale the publishing wing of Kahaka Ula o Ke'elikolani College of Hawaiian Language at UH Hilo. He earned his bachelor's degree in Hawaiian Studies and was born in South Florida and moved to Hilo in 2014 to learn Olela Hawaii and reconnect with his Hawaiian ohana and roots. He's been an avid researcher of Moʻokūʻauhau for a little over a decade, exploring vital records, Hawaiian language newspapers, and documents, as well as the emerging field of genealogy. So we would like to give a warm welcome to Kalani tonight, who is going to be talking about Ulukau and genealogy resources on Ulukau. Before we get started, just some housekeeping for everybody. If you guys would like to ask Kalani a question, please put your question in the Q&A. We're going to have a Q&A session after he's paused with his presentation. If you guys have just a comment that you'd like to send, please feel free to use the chat to do that. We will also be posting if there may be any links or anything into the chat for you guys to copy and paste and save for later. Tonight's session will be recorded and put up onto our Hawaii State Public Library's YouTube channel. I also have two special guest helpers today, Kavena Komeji and Michiko Josephs. They are librarians at the UH West Oahu James and Abigail Campbell Library. And these two lovely ladies help me every year with our genealogy classes. They started here at Nanakuli Public Library, you see behind me, in 2018, and they've really outgrown our 50-person meeting space. And every year, me and our wonderful librarians tonight, we team up and we help to provide these resource classes to the public. So I would like to also mahalo them for always helping and making sure that they kako'o me every year. I really appreciate them. I can't say how, I can't even express how much I appreciate them. And I hope that everyone, whether you're starting your journey or you're way into your journey, that you learn something new tonight. I know that every time I have one of these classes, I learn something new as a librarian. Even if it's the same presenter from the last year, I always learn something new. So I hope that's something everyone experiences tonight. And without further ado, I'm gonna hand it on over to Kalani.
Oh, mahalo anui. Ke aloha nui ia kākou apau. Oke o Kalani Stoleson. My name is Kalani Stoleson. I am, as Kylie said, a curriculum developer, part of the curriculum development team here at Kalani, which is the publishing wing of the Hawaiian Language College here, Kahaka Ula o Ke'elikolani. Yes, I I guess I'll talk a little bit about myself. I guess I should go ahead and put this slide up. Let me go ahead and start the slideshow. Okay, hope that's coming through okay. Anyway, yes, as I was saying, I am, as Kylie mentioned, I was actually born in South Florida, and I spent the majority of my young life over there, until I was about, how old was I? I was 21. Then we moved to Georgia for about 4 years, my parents and my sister and I. And my dad, he was born in Kalihi, and in 1952. And my dad's dad was a sailor in the Navy during World War II, and my dad's mom was a hula dancer and a greeter at the airport for when people come off the plane. When in the old days, when they used to have people just standing there waiting to put lei on everyone who's coming off the plane. That was one of the things my grandmother would do. And so that's their story there. And then they had my dad and my dad's older sister in Hawaii. And then in 1953, my grandfather, who was a career Navy man, he got restationed in California. And so that's where my dad grew up. And the rest of his siblings were mostly born there. And then he wandered his way over to Florida, and that's where he met my mother, and that's where I was born. So it's been kind of a thing for me, always wanting to reconnect to my tutuahine's side of the of genealogy, and especially since ever since my dad introduced me to genealogy. One day he came back from a family reunion in 2000. He came to Hawaii and then came back to Florida. And I remember he plopped this giant genealogy book down in front of me on the table. And he said, these are your ancestors. You gotta learn about them. And so ever since that day, I was just absolutely fascinated by the stories, like by all these old photos of people wearing these elegant clothes, and just fascinated and wanting to know their stories and their history and who they were, and that led to what has been almost a lifelong obsession with genealogy. But really, I think my dedicated genealogical research started about a decade or so ago. And that's when I started to get into, researching via, you start with census records and, ancestry subscription, and, going from there to kind of learning the specific things of Hawaiian genealogy and genealogy research in general in Hawaii, which I think Tyler actually mentioned it last session. It can be pretty complicated because sometimes we don't have as many records, as much of a depth and history of records that have survived to us to today as many other places do. And so we have to kind of figure out how to do our research with the records that we do have. And luckily, my work here at Kahaliku Mo'o, one of the things that we kind of take care of is this website called Ulukau. And I'll go ahead and continue with my presentation. So this presentation is called He Haʻawina Kūʻauhau, which is basically this Haʻawina, I guess sometimes it's translated as like a lesson or a homework, but it can also be something that's received. Yeah. So this receptacle of genealogical information that we've inherited from Kupuna. And the subtitle here is Exploring Moʻokūʻauhau Resources in the Ulukau Database. Anywho, I guess I'll go ahead and move forward. So to start, I guess I'll explain a little bit about Ulukau itself. So the Ulukau Hawaiian Electronic Library is a digital library, primarily consisting of Hawaiian language resources and materials. The name comes from the combination of two words here, ulu and kau, and both in combination refer to a supernatural revelation, like kind of being struck maybe with divine inspiration, with knowledge, with prophetic powers. This is also often associated with possession, actually, like in the sense of being possessed by an ancestor, kupuna, aumakua, what have you. And of course, in like our traditional frame of mind, this isn't a negative thing. It doesn't have a negative connotation. It has positive connotation. Sometimes, our ancestors find these ways to communicate with us, and that is the source of the name of this website, of this database, Ulukau. So the Ulukau initiative was originally coordinated by Kahaliku Mo'o and another organization called Alulike, which they work quite a lot in terms of for the welfare and benefit of Hawaiians. And so that's the context out of which Ulukau was born. And the purpose of Ulukau is to make resources available for the use, teaching, and revitalization of the Hawaiian language and a broader, deeper understanding of Hawaii. So yeah, that's a little bit about the Ulukau website. And I'm going to go ahead and explain some of the Moʻokūʻauhau resources that you can find on Ulukau. So the main ones I'm going to be showing you a bit of today are we have Papa Kuhi Kuhi Moʻokūʻauhau, or our genealogy index. That's probably the biggest, most used genealogy resource that we have in the Ulukau database. But I'll also be talking about our place names index, Aina. I'll be talking about our Nupepa, our Hawaiian language newspapers, and talk a bit as well about Papa Kilo Hawaiian newspaper database, which we're kind of an associate with, but we don't manage Papa Kilo. And then I'll also talk a little bit about Kani Aina, which is our native speaker recording database, which just was launched fairly recently. Within the last couple of years, it was launched, and is still being updated, and more recordings and transcriptions and things like that are being added to that as we speak. And I'll show you some other miscellaneous resources as well. But anyway, we'll start with the genealogy indexes. So when you go to Ulukau and go to the genealogy index page, this is what you're going to see. You can just type in, start with a name or two names or what have you in the search bar. You can also browse the index, and I'll kind of show you what that will look like. The things that are contained in our genealogy index, we have marriage records. We have an index of divorces. We have indexes for probates and wills, which most of the time are associated with the death or passing of someone. But there are some exceptions. And also we have a citizenship index, and that involves denization, naturalization records, and also some passport records. So let's get going on that. First, I did want to explain a little bit about some tools you can use when searching in the genealogy index. A lot of times we'll, I think the normal thing is you just type in the name and you search it and you see what pops up. But because of, oftentimes these things, the search records come through from transcriptions, which are based on the actual physical records. And sometimes those transcriptions, there can be errors in the transcription. There can be inconsistencies in spelling of certain names. You can have situations where, I don't know, you're looking for something more specific. Maybe you're looking for two people, or you're looking for a certain person's name in a certain place, or maybe that person has a variety of names that they go by. Sometimes with our Hawaiian names, you can have short versions. You can have longer versions of the same name. And then in colloquial and everyday usage, our ancestors would just use the shortened name sometimes, or a nickname or what have you. So like someone named Kanoho can be Kanoho Leo, can be Kanoho Ho'okahi. You can have all kinds of variations, and they just went by Kanoho in their everyday life. But maybe you want to try to cast a wider net to see if a record associated with that person will come up under any number of the names that they might have used, or variations they might have used of their name. So I'll explain a couple of the easier ones. Well, first we have quotation marks. So when searching, you can use this if you put two or more names or words in a sequence and you put quote marks around them, then the database will be searched for those names in that sequence or those words in that sequence. So if you say, for example, I put up here Kioniana, which is a Hawaiianization of John Young. Maybe you're looking for someone named John Young. There's the famous John Young, but then maybe you also have an ancestor who went by John Young like this, Kioniana, and you can go ahead and put your quotes around it, and then that's the kind of, it'll bring up Kioniana, because there could be lots of Kioni in there, and you want to narrow it down. And then you have this symbol. What is that called? A Enye symbol? Or a schwa? I'm not actually sure what this symbol is called. But this one, it's up at the top left of your keyboard. And if someone knows the actual official name of this symbol, please go ahead and put that in the comments, because I'd like to know. But anyway, this is one that you can use to for putting in, say, a distance between words. So if you use this symbol in conjunction with the quotations, then as I have the first example here, where you have Kioniana, the symbol, and then the number 2, what will happen is the database will be searched for those 2 words within 2 spaces of each other, and they can even be reversed. So sometimes in genealogical records, in these marriage records or what have you, it'll have last name first, Ana, comma, Kioni. And in that case, this will make sure that it catches any of those kinds of examples as well. Or maybe, you're not actually looking for someone named Kioniana. Maybe you're actually looking for 2 people, and one of them is Kioni and one of them is Ana, and maybe they married each other. You can put in something like this with Kioniana and in quotations, and then put the symbol and the number 5. And that number corresponds with widening the space between those 2 words. So in this case, you might have Kioni and Ana on the same document, but not right next to each other, implying, first last name or something like that. And then the last one here, maybe you're not searching for another name, but you're searching for a place. You have a kupuna named Lehua, and you know that Lehua lived at Waikiki. And so you want to kind of cast a wider net and see if there's any documents where Lehua and Waikiki are kind of on the same page. Then you can do something like this, where you have the symbol and the number 10 for, just widening that space that the 2 words can be located in respect to each other. Then if you use the symbol without the quotation marks, then it kind of makes the search for that name a little fuzzier. So say I put Lehua and I put the mark here, then you can get all kinds of variants of names that are similar, like Leihua, Kalehua, Kehua, Pulehua, Lahui. So that kind of casts a wider net in case, maybe there's a transcription error, or again, they go by, there's a variant of their nickname. Often you'll see, in fact, with a lot of the names of our kupuna, they'll sometimes go by Lehua in a document or Kalehua, and that ka is just we call it a ka'i, or a definite article. It just kind of means the, but there's lots of examples of that in names, where you can easily have kupuna who would say go by hinu or kahinu, or ola or keola, just plenty of examples of that. So this is kind of a useful thing for capturing those variations. You can also use question mark and the what you call this? Boy, I'm blanking on this, the little star. I know this one, but I forget it now, of course. But these are also symbols you can use. And in a case, say, where you might be looking for a variation on one letter, you use a question mark. So if you type in KEO question mark I, then you're going to get back any records that have any kind of letter or even a space in that question mark space. So you could get Kioni, Kyoki, Kioli, all kinds. And then the star is kind of similar, but it's not limited to one character. So the question mark kind of replaces a single character, and you can put in multiple question marks in an entry to have it as a space holder for any kind of character. But the star will stand in and can stand in for multiple characters. So it'll search for any name that begins with KEO and ends with I. So that can be Kioni, Kyoki, Kioli, Kiovai, Kiolanui, Kiomailani, all kinds. And then you can also put the star at the end of a name or a portion of a name, and that will give you both that name. So in this example, Kanoho, and it'll also give you if there's other variations like Kanoho Noho, Kanoho Ho'okahi, Kanoho Leo, just useful things in terms of kind of making your search a little more fine-tuned. So yeah, tilde and asterisk. Mahalo, Wendy, and Robin and Rita for an asterisk. How'd I forget that? I'm just blanking out here, but mahalo anui for helping me out. Okay, so let's keep going here. So here's some more things you can use. Now, these markers are sometimes called Boolean search terms. And so you can get a little more specific. So say you're looking for records of Keoni, but you don't want any records that have to do with Ana, then you can put in not in capital letters, all capitals. So Keoni not Ana is going to make sure that you only get records for Keoni that don't involve Ana in any way. Likewise, Ana not Keoni. Maybe you just want to find Ana and you don't want to you want to find what happened with her after Keoni or before Keoni. Then you can put in Ana not Keoni to remove Keoni from the picture. You can also put in the exclamation mark. The exclamation mark functions the same way as the not Boolean term. You also have and. So you can use and also the ampersand sign. I remember that one, ampersand. So you can search for Kanoho and Keola to make sure that you only get records that include both terms. Likewise with the ampersand symbol. You can also use or. So maybe you want records that have Kanoho, and also records that have Mileka. Say you have an ancestor who, sometimes went by Kanoho, sometimes went by Mileka, and you want to be able to find any records that have either of those names in them. Then you can use the or command, Kanoho or Mileka, and you should get all records that have either one of those names in them. And then to get a little more complicated, you can use parentheses as well. And you can combine all of these commands to get kind of specify and adjust your search as you need. So for parentheses, you can do something like this, Kanoho or Mileka in parentheses and Yakopa. in which case you're looking for any records that have Yakopa and either Kanoho or Milaka in the record. You can also do something like this, Kanoho or Milaka, not Yakopa. If you're trying to find, again, records for Kanoho or Milaka, and you don't want to find anything that has to do with Yakopa. Oops. And then you have this plus sign, and you can use the plus sign to make sure that whatever word follows the plus sign is located anywhere on the document that you're searching for. So in this case, Waikiki, I know that this marriage occurred in Waikiki, and I want to find a marriage between Lehua and Keone. Then I can use this formulation to get that. And yeah, I show a couple different examples of just how fine-tuned you can actually get by using these terminologies. It can actually save you some time if you're savvy at using them. So anyway, just a little bit about some search tools. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the marriages. This is probably the section of the indexes that we get used the most. So our marriage index covers these date ranges that you see here. So for Hawaii Island, it's 1832 to 1929. Maui begins at 1842. Our Molokai records at 1850, Oahu at 1832, and Kauai 1826 to 1929, all of those. And then we have some Ni'ihau marriage records from 1849 to 1856. So those are everything that you can expect to find in our index. Mind you, the index doesn't include all marriage records. There are some that, I think Ancestry and Family Search also have some scans of marriage records from the 1930s on a little bit into maybe, I think the cutoff is around 1940. If other sources for marriage records pop up, then, it doesn't necessarily account for that. But these records and the index that we have, this all comes from the Hawaii State Archive source. So that's the source for all of these. So the earlier ones, and I'll show you, this is what you'll find if you search, say here, I searched for Milaka in this example, and the search results at the top left here of the results page, it will show you the total word count, how many times Milaka showed up in the index, and how many unique documents match the search. And so you can do that with multiple names as well, and it'll show you how many for each word, and then the overlap as well if you don't use the advanced tools. Anyway, and so when you search, I should point out back on this one. So here you have this listing of results, and there's two icons on the left of the results here. So the icon on the far left here, that's the transcription of these of the index. And then if you want to double check the source document, then you can click on the little icon on the right, and that will bring you to a scanned version of the source document. So sometimes even in the step of digitization, there could be a transcription error. So it's worth double checking on the source if something's not quite adding up. And I think a cardinal rule as someone doing genealogy research is to try to go to the source wherever possible. So anywho, so if you click on one of those, I decided to click on the transcribed index of which included the marriage record for Jacobo and Mileka. And so what the transcription will show is it'll give the date of a marriage, and it'll give a place of the marriage. And you see this little K in parentheses on the left side that stands for Kane, which is male. So that can tell you, okay, who is the husband and who is the wife in this marriage record. And then on the far right end of your results, when you're looking at the index, you'll see a reference number for the record in question. And if it is linked in red, that means you can go ahead and click on that link, and you'll be taken to a photocopy of the original of the record itself. Anything that doesn't have the kind of red color to it with the underline, those are documents that we don't have for immediate access right off of Ulukau. But oftentimes you can find them on one of the in the Hawaii State Archives databases, and I'll show you how to get to that in a little bit. So here's some examples of some marriage records. So the older marriage records that you'll find, a lot of those will come from records or personal journals kept by pastors and missionaries. So missionaries at certain places, pastors of various of churches or what have you. These records come from their own journal entries regarding marriages that happened. So you can see an example of that on the left hand here. This is a photocopy from that one such journal. And you can see on the left-hand side, we have the year 1860. We've got the date here, January 3rd, 1860. And then we have the couple here, Jacobo and Mileka. And then often with the older records, you get the date. You can get where it was, or what district or what particular settlement. And then you also get the residences of each individual. So either their birthplace or their or where they're residing at the time. So we see here Jacobo is living at Puakō, and Mileka is living at Kapunapuna in Kohala, I think Kohala Akau, North Kohala district. So, and when I saw this, I had never heard of Kapunapuna before. That was a new name to me. I mean, a lot of them are new names because, I mean, I grew up in Florida, but still, even in the course of genealogy research, I wasn't familiar with Kapunapuna, but I'll show you some resources we have that involve land place names as well in a little bit. Sometimes if you're lucky, you also can find scans of this record here on the right, and this is the actual marriage certificate which was issued for Jacopo and for Mileka. And as it says here, Palapala Mare, a marriage document. Ke ai Iakunei o Jacobo. Jacobo is being approved. A Hawaiian who is living at Puakō in Waimea on the island of Hawaii to marry with Mileka, a Hawaiian woman who is living at Kapunapuna, Kohala Akau on Hawaii Island. And it gives here the location, Kauai, and the marriage was conducted 3rd of January, 1860. It shows as well the approval of G.D. Manuia, who was a Luna Mare, who's the what you call it, a person who was able to approve marriages. And also this record even came with the scan of the back. And here we have Reverend Lorenzo Lyons of Waimea. So I believe it was Reverend Lorenzo Lyons who conducted the ceremony. Oh, wow. Manuia, we have a Ohana relation to Manuia. That's awesome. Did you know that G.D. Manuia was a marriage officiant or on the board of marriages at the time for Kauai area? It's pretty neat. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. Sometimes the names you see pop up who are also able to certify marriages and things like that. You get a real cool idea of the community and the people who were involved in each other's lives and the kinds of roles that they played out. It really kind of, those kinds of things are the things I like to think of as providing kind of color and vibrance to the picture, to the image that we have of our kupuna. Yeah, so very cool. Now, I also wanted to show some newer records. So these are the kinds of records that you start to see around the 1890s, turn of the century, up through to 1929. The marriage records that we have on, that have survived to us, start to become a little more detailed. So this one on the left is from a marriage record from 1901. So often these records will give the names of the spouses, their age. It will give their status, whether this is the first time they're marrying, whether they are divorced or widowed. And it will give their nationality or ethnic background, where they're living. It gives the names of the parents and where they're living, and if they've passed away as well, and their ethnic background. So here we have William Spencer marrying Levi Bright. Yeah, we come down and we see their names, we see location, and it also gives us witnesses as well. So we have here, I think that's Mrs. Kai, and we have Pa'auhau as the place. Actually, no, Mrs. Kai is the only witness written down here, but Pa'auhau is the place where the marriage happened. That's outside of that's up in Hamakua. And ceremony performed by, looks like CM or GM Kamakavivo Ole. At the Pa'auhau Church. Oh, that's John Osorio's Ohana. See, I knew Osorio, that's a Hilo family, but I knew they also had a connection there to Kamakavivo Ole, but I didn't realize it was from up there. That's cool. And then you see something quite similar with this other record here on the right side. Sometimes the records will even show if an individual was divorced, they'll even give the name of their previous spouse. And little details like that. This one even has some extra stuff filled in between the lines here where we have their residence place, but someone decided they also wanted to specify birthplace, Waipahu, which is pretty neat. So yeah, these are really, really valuable when conducting genealogy research. I definitely suggest that one really useful thing for doing genealogy research, not just building a tree of your own individual line, but also broadening your tree. So it's worthwhile researching not just your kupuna, your grandparents, great-grandparents, but also their siblings, and getting a full idea of their siblings and kind of broadening out the tree, because oftentimes, especially when you hit kind of a roadblock in your research on one kupuna, and a record may not survive for them, you can find records that way for siblings, and that can by cross-referencing with those kinds of records, that can help you overcome some of those roadblocks that you might experience. And it's worth also taking note of, excuse me, my voice is going. Also worth taking note of the witness names that get written down here. Often the witnesses are family members as well, or close friends. And so if you've really hit kind of a roadblock and you're really having trouble figuring out another branch or another generation up, it's worth looking into these witnesses. And if you can figure out who they are, sometimes a relationship will reveal itself. So, yeah, okay, let's continue. So, as I was saying before, sometimes when you're searching our marriage index, you'll encounter a situation where we don't have the physical record linked on our index. Oftentimes, you can actually find those records that we don't have at the Hawaii State Archives digital collections. So if you go ahead and search for their digital collections and you come down to this area I circled here, the Vital Statistics collection, then you'll be able to, search for those records, just like how you found them in our index. And oftentimes you can find the copy of the original there. So just good to know. And they have all kinds of great stuff over here too. And they're launching they've recently launched a new digital collections website, which I might show you a little bit of as well. But we'll see if we get there. Anyway, so now the rest of the stuff in our genealogy indexes, we only have the index. So we don't have links to the physical copies like we do for the marriage records. But this is information that you can take if you have a family search account or if you have Ancestry. This is information you can take there to locate these documents. So I'll run through divorces here real quick. So our divorce index is split up by the circuit court it's associated with. So as a general rule, First Circuit records have to do with divorces on Oahu. But you also find records from other islands in there as well, especially older divorce records you'll find in there. Second Circuit has to do with Maui. Third and fourth both have to do with Hawaii Island. Different, it's supposed to be like what I read somewhere is different moku or different districts of the island account for each circuit. But I've seen it all kind of mixed up in there as well when actually searching for them. So generally, yeah, third and fourth have to do with Hawaii records. And then Fifth Circuit is records associated with Kauai. So here I searched for this particular record I have highlighted here is a divorce record for Kanoho. And it's written here O Yakopa, but that O is actually a marker designating his name, and his actual name is Yakopa. So these are, well, one is a kupuna of mine, and I'll show you that. Actually, I'll go ahead and show you an example of it now. So when you go to, let me pull up the actual thing. I'll show you how to get to these records on family search. So I think Tyler talked about this as well in his presentation, which is really great. His presentation on land deeds and genealogy. I really strongly encourage, if you missed that, to go and check that out. So if we go up here, so from our index, we have Yakopa and Kanoho, and we have record number 1701. And I don't show it in this little screenshot, but this is actually, this was filed under the First Circuit. even though I know that they are living on Hawaii Island, because it's a bit of an older divorce record. So I take that information, I come over to family search, I go into the catalog. I think Tyler showed you how to do this. When you go to catalog, I'll do it real quick here. And you just look for Hawaii. And you go ahead and open that up. And this is going to give you everything that that's in Family Search's files that has to do with Hawaii. So I'll come down here. Actually, I'm looking for divorces. So right here we have divorce records. And then I can go ahead and open this up. And luckily, I believe Family Search has made the entirety of their divorce records searchable, which is really useful. You can just use the names as found on the index and search them here, and you'll be able to bring the document right up without having to go in to the records and comb through them one by one, which you still can do. Again, there can be errors, there can be things that weren't indexed, pages that were missed. So it's worth, checking if you're hitting a roadblock. But since they've got an index, I'm just going to go ahead and bring that up. And I'm going to look for Kanoho. And then under place, I'm just going to put a little hash here because, that's another thing Tyler pointed out that I learned from his, is that before I was just putting in Hawaii here because I figured it pulls up everything that has to do with Hawaii. But you can put that in to get the search function to work without having to specify a place. I'm actually going to do Oyakopa. There we go. So we've got this record here. And I can bring up this divorce record here. It's also on Ancestry, and I might go to that one if I have it up. Yeah, I do. Just because the Ancestry scans are a little bit better quality. They're in color and everything, so you can see the watermark and little details like that. So here's a record for Jacopo and Kanoho's divorce. And we can go in here and it gives the details. And this document is in English. Oftentimes the divorce records and probate records, those are recorded in Olelo, Hawaii. But some of them are in English. And so in this case, I picked this one out because it can be read in English. So here, often in these proceedings, we get a date of marriage of the individuals involved. And we get an account of what exactly happened to lead to this point of divorce. And we also get testimonies from people in their lives, relatives or friends who know them, who are able to account to the situation. And all of that can be very useful information for genealogy research. So for example, this one, Kanoho is my great-great-great-great-grandmother. And I only knew her by that one name, Kanoho, at the time. And I knew that before my great-great-great-great-grandfather, Kahakawila, she had been previously married and had a connection to the Kaha'ikupuna family of Kona. And so eventually I found this record of a divorce between Kanoho and Jacopa, or that can be a Hawaiianization for Jacob. And Jacob is Kaha'ikupuna. He's the progenitor of the Kaha'ikupuna family line in that side in North Kona. And so here we get this testimony here that they were married on the 3rd of January, 1860. And from this record, I was actually able to backtrack and look for a marriage record that has anything to do with Jacoba, because there's lots of variant spellings of Jacoba or Hawaiianizations for Jacob. There's sometimes Yokopa, Yokoba with the B. So I searched it, and it was thanks to this divorce record she actually goes into detail here and says that the reason she's divorcing him is that he started sleeping with her sister, which is, you other than that, you find some spicy details in here. But anyway, going back to that, the marriage record, finding that marriage record, I didn't find her under the name Kanoho. I found her under the name Mileka. And that was the first time that I had ever seen that name Mileka for Kanoho. So now I have another name for Kanoho. And Mileka, it turns out, is a family name. One of my great-grandfather's sisters was named Mileka, and it's because of her. So that's one of the things that, I was able to find out via looking at this divorce record. So yeah, that's divorce. Probate records. So probate records are similar in that they're organized by the circuit court that they're associated with, and mostly have to do with wills or the management rather of the estates of people who have passed. And so those involve the wills that they write and leave behind, and taking stock of their possessions, of their wealth, and any creditors and any heirs and things like that. So we have probates for First Circuit from 1845 to 1900, Second from 1849 to 1917. As you can see, generally from around the mid-1800s up to turn of the century is the span for those. We also have an index of the probate minutes book. So for these probate records here and for the wills, those are cases where the physical copies can be found on Family Search in the catalog, as well as on Ancestry. The probate minutes books are not there. But I recently found out, in fact, just a couple of days ago as I was preparing this presentation, that the minute books are scanned and digitized and available online. And those are available on this new database that the Hawaii State Archives has been putting together. So if I can bring that up, where is that? I might have to look it up. I'll go ahead and. So if we look up Hawaii State Archives, right here, Digital Archives of Hawaii, digitalarchives.hawaii.gov. So this is a phenomenal database full of records and also of images. It's just fantastic. I love it. And it's still in a beta mode, so it's still being updated and it's still being fine-tuned. And they're constantly adding new records, new images. I mean, the State Archives has tons to scan, and they're putting up so much of it here, so it's wonderful. But if we look for probate, and we see what comes up, and look at this. They have here the minute books. And so the minute books involve various testimonials of people talking about the probates in question. So these are not indexed, so you will have to use our Ulukau reference and then come back here to work through the index. Also, our Ulukau index is only for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th circuits. So we don't actually have an index for this one, which is a scan of the 2nd Circuit Court. So this is one you will have to just kind of sift through. As you can see, that's pretty arduous because you're going to have to really literally go page by page to see what's in there. But you also have here, it shows the location of this file, so you can kind of come back here to the judiciary folder, and you can see everything is pretty much cataloged in here. Anyway, that's just a little aside about that. So the wills also, we have an index of wills, and in that case, a lot of the probate indexes, a lot of the probate records rather include wills as well. But in some cases you have wills that are separate, that are not associated with or for some reason or another weren't kept with a probate index or probate record rather. And so those are also searchable on Family Search. So and if anyone wants, after the end of the presentation, I can show, anyone how to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of try to move things forward a little here, because I'm seeing we're getting close to 7. So anyway, citizenship records. We also have an index for naturalization records and denization records, as well as passport records that start, again, mid-19th century right up to the turn of the century. And so naturalization, this example here, I got this one from the Family Search catalog. This is an ancestor of mine. This is Thomas Simmons, who I only discovered through a probate record for his brother John Avery Simmons, was the way that I discovered that he is my ancestor, my 4 times great-grandfather. I think he was a whaler, and he came over and jumped ship and decided to stay along with his brother. And so he had 3 children, and none of those children bear the name Simmons. In fact, my line, their name switched to Liana. But with a combination of DNA research and research into probate indexes, I was able to figure out that Thomas Simmons was my kupuna. So we'll move right along. Another thing that is useful is we have a place name index as well. So sometimes in some records you might see a place name that you don't recognize, or you might, oftentimes there's names in places that are used multiple times throughout the islands. And this is a good example, this place name Lihue. So when I was originally going through some documents involving one of my kupuna, Francis Spencer, he ended up being a cattle rancher in Waimea on the Big Island, on Hawaii Island, that is. And in some of those records, it makes reference to holdings or ranch, like cattle that he had at Lihue. And at first I thought, Lihue, that's the other side of the islands. Wow, I can't believe it. He had cattle operations on Hawaii and on Kauai. And I had thought that for a while, until it dawned on me that maybe this Lihue is a different place. And so sure enough, I go and search in the place names index, and there is a result for a Lihue right here on the just on the west side of Waimea. And that, it turns out, is the Lihue being referenced in those documents, not the one on Kauai. So yeah, very useful in terms of positioning an ancestor in a space and in a time. And that way you can kind of figure out, okay, is it reasonable then that they would be in this place that's nearby? And that maybe that's how, certain people meet each other, certain people marry, all of that. It's really, really important to kind of be able to track your ancestor to where they are and when they're there for those purposes. Another resource that we have are the the Hawaiian language newspapers. So we have our own database of Hawaiian language newspapers on Ulukau. There's another one at Papakilo. So I'll explain some of the differences between the two. Ulukau, the database is a bit smaller than the Papakilo database. However, the transcriptions there were all done by hand by individuals who actually read the the articles and transcribed them as they read them. Whereas the one in Papakilo, their search function relies a lot on automated transcription. So cases where these newspapers were scanned and a computer tried to piece together, and tried to read the document and provide a transcription. And those can often, very often, come out really, really faulty. In fact, a lot of the transcriptions are completely unreadable on Papakilo. Sometimes you get lucky and it does come through clearly. And then other times there are volunteers who will go in and provide a transcription and correct the automated ones. But that's an important distinction to know. So sometimes it's worth conducting a search on Ulukau's newspaper database as well as at Papakilo, just for that difference in transcription. So newspapers are really useful for birth, marriage, and death records, death announcements, as well as obituaries, and also just in general, kind of filling out the life story of your kupuna once you have their names and their locations and everything. The example I have here on the right is actually an obituary for my great grandmother that was written by her husband, my 3 times great grandfather, Liana Kamaki Liana, and he's the descendant of Thomas Simmons, who I showed you earlier. His father was Thomas Simmons. And so he has this beautiful obituary here where, he kind of poetically references all these places and things that were significant to his wife's life, and he gives all kinds of details in here. He gives the parents' names of his wife. We have Kalua and Ahia are the mother and father respectively of my kupuna, Neyana Kalua. And it gives her date of birth, 18th of May, 1865. And it gives the year that they were married in 1882. And it tells, he talks about the number of children they had together, all kinds of details in here. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I strongly encourage, if you don't know Olelo, finding these documents, these articles, and finding someone who can provide you a translation of them, because they're really, really wonderful sources for information, and beautiful too. One other one I wanted to touch on a little bit is Kani Aina. So Kani Aina is, like I said, the database of native speakers. This can be useful if you know, there's another one where you're going to need some Hawaiian language knowledge or someone who knows to be able to translate for you. But if you know the name of a kupuna or like a relation of yours who may have been interviewed, this holds those interviews, and it includes some transcriptions as well. So I'll go ahead and show an example there. Where's my example? Here it is. So this is a conversation between Larry Kimura and Alice Kema that was held in 1973. And I search here for, actually I'll search here for Hoahanau. And we can see down here, they're talking about, relations. And then it comes out, that's my cousin's song. Oh yeah, you're going to sing your cousin's song. Yeah, Clarence Kinney, that's my cousin. So sometimes in the course of these interviews, often kupuna are discussed, family relations are discussed. So you can get those kinds of details here. If someone was Hanai, they'll discuss those things as well. And also just more in terms of giving more of a vivid picture of the life that one of your kupuna may have had. So wonderful, wonderful stuff. And just to hear their voices is beautiful. And so I'll continue on. So here's some other quick resources that I think are worth mentioning. In our collection of books, we have these things called polk directories. So these are early directories, and kind of some of them are combination tourist guides, tourism guides. And there's 3 of them that we have scans of, one from 1880, one from 1890, and from 1892. And so I'll show you that real quick. I'll just go up here. So if we go Ulukau, this is the Ulukau website, by the way. And here you can find all of the databases that we have. Here's our place names. Here's our genealogy index. We do have this little Mahele database, but it's only a select number of records from Kauai and from Ni'ihau, but they are transcribed, and I believe transcribed in English. So if we go to books, and I am going to search for, what did I say, polk? So let's bring up polk. So here they are, polk 1880, 1890, 1892. So if we open up one of these, we can find, here it's organized by, we have here advertisements. It's got directories for different, like explaining certain things that are at particular towns or settlements, what kinds of amenities, resources are there, you know, a description of governance, of, you know, people of note. And then you also get I'm gonna find an example in here. For example, here you go. Islands of Kauai and Ni'ihau. You also get a name directory here that gives the names of various people, and what work they do and where they're living. So we can see here, Ka'ike is a laborer. He lives at Koloa. We can see here, Kaina is a farmer. He lives at Koloa as well. Joseph Ka'imi, he's a kalo planter. He lives at Ko'olau. So sometimes this can be a very, you know, it's just a little bit of information, but sometimes that little bit of information is enough to open up a world of possibilities for genealogy research. Anyway, there's that. I told you about the Mahele database. We have the Brother Bertram photo collection, but a lot of those, they're photos that Brother Bertram, he's a Catholic minister, took during his time here in the territorial days. And a lot of those, though, are not labeled in terms of who's in them. But for example, he took photos of, say, the St. Louis school football team in 1912. And if you know you had a kupuna who attended St. Louis Catholic school at that year and was on the football team, then maybe you open up that image and you can actually find a picture of them, which to me is just the most exciting thing when doing any genealogy research. And we also have an index of Honolulu Advertiser and Star Bulletin Index, which provides vital records index within that newspaper. So anyway, does it really for my presentation right now. What's happening? Mahalo nui for listening to me and letting me share with everyone some of the things we have at Ulukau. If anyone has any questions or anything that they'd like me to follow up on and show more detail or anything like that, just let me know. And mahalo nui ya'auko pakahia pau, kelo nui ya'auko.
Mahalo, Kalani. If anybody has any questions please put them into the Q&A. We probably have time for maybe like 1 or 2 questions. Oh, your presentation was so thorough, Kalani, that everyone doesn't have questions because you did such a good job at explaining everything.
Well, mahalo for that take.
We do have one question about accessing the recording. Okay, so the recording is going to be put up onto our Hawaii State Public Library YouTube channel. We also have recordings of some of the previous genealogy resource speaker series sessions that we've had since January. So you just go to youtube.com, search Hawaii State Public Library System. Actually, Kavena, could you see if you can put the link up for the YouTube channel? If you can go Google it real fast for me. Sorry, I should have had it ready. This presentation, Kalani, it will take maybe about 2 to 3 weeks to get up on the YouTube, just because I have to redo all the captioning by hand.
Oh, I'll wait.
As as wonderful as the Zoom captioning is, it does not record any of the Olelo Hawaii words correctly. So it takes me a little while to compare the slides and the words and the documents to make sure that everything is spelt correctly. And that's super important that we spell our kupuna's names as they were in their documents. So that is on top of my other duties as a librarian. So that takes 1 to 2 weeks, you guys, for that to show up on the YouTube. But I encourage you guys to look at our YouTube channel at the previous recordings that we've done and check those out. We have Tyler's land deed recording that's up right now on the YouTube. That was the most recent one from last month. Let me check if we have any questions. Okay, we don't have any questions, Kalani. If you guys do think of something, you guys are more than welcome to give me a call at Nanakuli Public Library. We do telephone reference here. You can also use our Ask a Librarian link on the Hawaii State Library's website. And there's one more thing that I had to say. I want to mahalo you, Kalani, for taking time out of your busy day to come and share with us about Ulukau and about how things on Ulukau can be accessed in other places, like the indexes on Ulukau, you find it and you can go and find the documents in different places. I learned a lot tonight on how to go look for the things that are indexed in a real place. So I really appreciate that. I want to quickly mahalo Kavena and Michiko for being with us tonight as well. They are my wonderful co-librarian hosts on this presentation every year. And someone says that they, up until now, they've only used the dictionary.
Oh, yes. Ulukau is also where we have our Hawaiian language dictionary, wehewehe, which I think most people are familiar with.
Oh, and I believe someone asked about translations, or you were mentioning translation services, yeah, Kalani?
Oh, in terms of translation services. Well, I mean, I do translations, but I think actually in Tyler's presentation, you guys discuss translation services and you bring up a particular site that has some people who are there, and I checked that out as well, and I know a few of the people on that list, and they're great. And
I believe it's Poe Unuhi.
Poe
I think I just
Unuhi,
put it in the
that's
chat. I
the
hope
one.
that link works.
Yeah,
I have not used them yet, but I've heard that they are super good
yeah.
in responding. So I encourage you guys, if it's something really important that you really want the full details, especially like those LCA awards, that you contact someone from that list, or someone that you know that knows Aloha Hawaii always helps too.
Yeah, a lot of the wills, a lot of the probates and divorce records are in Olelo, so definitely good to use those resources. Yeah, I cannot recommend Google Translate. It often misses the subtleties of communication in Olelo. So, and I think someone did ask about the native speech recordings. So yeah, if you go on the Ulukau website, you can go to Kani'aina, or even just search Kani'aina, Kaniaina, one word, and it should pop up. Mind you, that database, one is still being updated, and two, it's also used as a Hawaiian language instructional resource here at UH Hilo. And so some of the transcriptions, some of the professors don't like to give out the transcriptions because that gives the answers to the homework for the students. Yeah. So some of them are restricted, but if you request a transcription, we have them on file. And so you can send us an email. There should be links there for emailing us, and we can provide you with that.
Well, that's wonderful to know, Kalani. Mahalo.
Mhm.
All righty. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. I don't want to keep anybody too late. I know it's past everyone's dinner time. Thank you so much for everyone that attended tonight. I appreciate all of you coming to these programs. My very last thing, as you exit our session today, there will be a 5-question survey. That is super important. If you guys can take some time to fill it out, that is what we show our state librarian to tell her why it's super important for us to keep this webinar license and keep doing these classes every year. So if you guys could take some time to fill that out, that'd be wonderful. We also send your wonderful comments to our speaker, and they get to see how much you guys appreciate his presentation too. All right. I will bid everyone a good evening, and keep tuned. There's no more classes scheduled after June, but keep an eye out on our Hawaii State Public Library social media for upcoming programs and events. Okay. Oiho, everyone.